In a world where everyone is triggered, where emotions flare in seconds, where one comment can ruin your entire day, there is a different path. A quieter, stronger way. Buddhism doesn't teach you to run from your emotions, it teaches you to master them, to sit with your anger, your fear, your pain and not let them control you. Because true strength isn't found in how loud you respond. It's found in your ability to remain calm, present, and untouched. Imagine being the one in the room who doesn't flinch, doesn't react, doesn't lose control no matter what's happening around you. That's not indifference, that's power, and it's a power you can learn. Today, we uncover the path of the calm warrior, the one who feels deeply, but chooses response over reaction, silence over chaos, clarity over impulse. If you've ever been a prisoner to your emotions, this is your way out. 1. Reaction is the root of suffering. Every day, situations arise that trigger emotional responses. Someone cuts you off in traffic, a harsh word is spoken, or things don't go the way you expected. Instantly, your body reacts. You feel anger rising, frustration tightening your chest, or anxiety building in your mind. These emotional surges are natural, they are automatic. Your brain is wired to protect you, to defend, to survive, and emotions like anger, fear, and irritation are part of that mechanism. But here is the key. While you may not control the emotion that arises, you do control what happens next. Buddhism teaches us that between the stimulus and your reaction, there is a powerful, invisible momenta pause. It may be only a second long, but within that space lies the opportunity to break free from unconscious patterns. That small pause gives you the power to shift from reaction to reflection. It allows you to ask, do I want to respond with anger, or can I choose peace? Is this moment worth losing my calm? What is the wisest response right now? If you train your mind to pause even for a single breath, you unlock awareness. You stop being a puppet pulled by emotions and start becoming the master of your inner world. This simple practice of pausing doesn't just prevent regretful actions, it rewires your brain. It builds inner strength. It gives you space to respond with wisdom instead of reacting out of habit. And in that space, you realize you are not your emotion. You are the observer. You are the chooser. You are free. The more you strengthen this ability to pause and reflect, the more peace you will experience. You'll argue less. You'll forgive faster. You'll protect your energy. Over time, you'll find that emotional triggers that used to shake you no longer have power over you. That's not because the world changed, it's because you did. You stopped letting your reactions lead and started letting your awareness guide. And that's where true freedom begins. 2. Never let people control your inner state. One of the greatest forms of emotional suffering comes from allowing other people to dictate how we feel. Someone disrespects you, and you become angry. Someone ignores you, and you feel small. Someone criticizes you, and suddenly your entire day is ruined. But here's the truth. Buddhism reminds us of you are not meant to be a puppet controlled by the words, actions, or opinions of others. Your inner state is sacred, and no one should have the power to touch it without your permission. When you hand over your emotional state to others, you are constantly at the mercy of their moods, their opinions, their approval, or their rejection. You walk on eggshells. You live reactively. Your peace becomes fragile, and your happiness becomes conditional. But this is not the way of an awakened mind. The Buddha taught that the path to inner freedom begins when you stop tying your emotions to external events and people. You must learn to become rooted within. You must create an inner space that is so calm, so aware, so steady, that no storm outside of you can disturb it. This doesn't mean you become cold or detached. It means you become aware. you begin to recognize that when someone is angry or rude, it's often a reflection of their own inner suffering, not a reflection of your worth. Their behavior may be toxic, but your reaction doesn't have to be. You gain emotional control by first recognizing the game. Most people are not trying to hurt you, they are reacting from their own pain. When you see that clearly, you don't take things personally. You don't absorb their negativity. You observe it like a cloud passing in the sky. You stay grounded, not because the world is peaceful, but because you are. Learning not to react emotionally to others is a form of self-respect. It is a quiet declaration that says, I will not let your chaos enter my calm. I will not let your storm ruin my stillness. I will not give you the power to decide how I feel. And when you truly live by that, you begin to experience an entirely new level of peace. You realize that the most powerful person in any room is not the loudest, not the angriest, not the one who wins the argument, but the one who remains undisturbed. So protect your energy. Let people have their opinions, their judgments, their noise. You are not here to manage their emotions. You are here to master your own. And that mastery begins when you decide from this moment forward, no one else gets to control how you feel. 3. Silence is your weapon. In today's world, silence is often misunderstood. People assume that if you don't speak up, you're weak. If you don't argue back, you've lost. If you don't react, you don't care. But Buddhism teaches something far more profound. Silence is not weakness. It is power under control. It is a higher form of intelligence, restraint, and strength. Silence is the weapon of the wise. And those who know how to use it walk through chaos untouched. When someone insults you, silence disarms them. When someone argues for the sake of ego, silence denies them fuel. When life becomes noisy and uncertain, silence helps you hear your own truth. Most people speak to prove a point. The wise remain silent to preserve their peace. Because in that silence, they are not inactive. They are observing, understanding, and choosing clarity over impulse. There is a deep teaching in Buddhism. The more you speak without awareness, the more you leak energy. Words are powerful, but when spoken without control, they become weapons against your own peace. That's why the mindful practitioner guards their speech like a treasure. They know that unnecessary words lead to unnecessary suffering. They understand that the strongest response is often no response at all. Think about it. When emotions rise, anger, frustration, jealousy, what's your first urge? To speak, to react, to defend. But what if instead of speaking, you paused? What if you stayed silent long enough to hear what was beneath the emotion? In that silence, you begin to see clearly. You don't just react, you realize. You don't attack, you understand. And understanding leads to liberation. Silence also gives you control over timing. You don't always have to respond immediately. You can wait. Let the emotions settle. Let your clarity return. Then speak, if necessary, not from pain, but from peace. Because the words you say from stillness carry more truth than 1,000 spoken in anger. The truth is, not everyone deserves your words. Not every situation deserves your explanation. Not every insult deserves your reaction. When you choose silence, you're not surrendering to weakness, you're rising above the battlefield. You're letting the storm pass without stepping into it. Buddhism teaches that stillness is not the absence of movement, it's the mastery of it. And silence is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of wisdom. It is the voice of the mind that doesn't need validation. It is the response of the soul that's no longer shaken. So use your silence wisely. When it feels like everything demands your attention, your defense, your reaction, return to stillness. Breathe, say nothing, and let that be the loudest, most powerful thing in the room. 4. Reframe your mindset about problems. Most people see problems as obstacles, setbacks, or punishments. When something unexpected happens, when plans fail, relationships break, or life suddenly becomes difficult, the natural reaction is to resist, to complain, to feel victimized. But Buddhism teaches a completely different approach. Problems are not here to destroy you. They are here to awaken you. Every challenge carries within it a lesson. Every difficulty is an invitation to grow. The question is not, why is this happening to me? But what is this trying to teach me? This shift in mindset is called reframing, and it is one of the most powerful tools for emotional control. Instead of reacting to a problem with frustration, you pause and ask, is this moment here to develop my patience? Is this person challenging me to strengthen my boundaries? Is this failure pushing me to realign with a better path? You begin to realize that nothing is random. Every situation, even the painful ones, can serve your evolution if you look deeply enough. The Buddha taught that suffering is not caused by pain itself, but by our resistance to it. When you believe life should be smooth, you suffer every time it isn't. But when you accept that challenges are part of life, you begin to suffer less. You start facing problems not as personal attacks, but as spiritual training. Life becomes your teacher, not your enemy. Let's be honest, some lessons cannot be learned in comfort. You don't discover patience when everything goes your way. You don't develop strength when life is easy. You don't cultivate wisdom when there's nothing to test you. Real growth happens in the storm. Real transformation happens when you face pain without turning it into poison. Reframing is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about seeing the deeper reality behind the imperfection. It's about realizing that even your worst moments may be redirecting you to something better. A job loss might push you toward your true passion. A heartbreak might teach you how to love yourself. A failure might reveal your inner resilience. In Buddhism, this shift in perception is everything. It turns pain into purpose. It turns chaos into clarity. But this ability to reframe doesn't happen automatically. It requires practice. You must train your mind to look beyond the surface. You must pause, reflect, and ask better questions. Every time you do this, your mind becomes stronger, calmer, wiser. You become less reactive and more reflective. And eventually, you start to welcome problems not because you enjoy them, but because you understand their value. So the next time life doesn't go your way, resist the urge to panic. Instead, breathe, step back, and look again. There is a gift inside the hardship, but you'll only see it if you stop reacting and start reframing. When you change the way you look at a problem, the problem changes. That is not just philosophized power. The kind of power that gives you peace in a world full of noise. The kind of power that turns suffering into wisdom. And that's the kind of power that no one can take from you. 5. Do not seek validation from others. One of the most exhausting ways to live is constantly trying to be seen, accepted, and validated by others. Whether it's through social media likes, compliments, approval from family, or recognition at work, many people tie their self-worth to how others respond to them. If someone praises them, they feel high. If someone criticizes or ignores them, they feel low. Their emotions rise and fall based on how others treat them. But this cycle is dangerous. It creates a life of dependency, anxiety, and confusion. Buddhism teaches that true peace cannot exist where validation is outsourced. When your worth depends on external validation, you give your power away. You hand over control of your emotional state to people who may not even understand you, value you, or care about your truth. And the more you rely on that outside approval, the more disconnected you become from your own inner voice. Ask yourself, why do you need them to say you're good enough before you believe it yourself? Why do you wait for others to give you permission to feel proud of who you are? Why is your light only allowed to shine when someone else agrees it should? This need for validation often begins early. Many people grow up being rewarded only when they please others. Approval becomes a currency, and slowly they learn to perform, to impress, to fit in. But what gets lost in that process is authenticity. You start living for the image others approve of, rather than the truth that lives inside you. You filter your words, dim your light, and shrink your potential just to feel accepted. Buddhism invites you to undo this conditioning. It reminds you that you were born worthy, not because someone said so, but because you exist. You don't need anyone's permission to feel complete. You don't need applause to feel confident. You don't need attention to know your value. The Buddha never taught people to seek validation. He taught them to seek truth, inner truth, unshakable truth, the kind that exists even when the world is silent. When you begin to let go of validation seeking, something amazing happens. You start to hear your own voice again. You begin to do things because they feel right, not because they'll be seen. You choose paths that align with your values, not with public approval. You express yourself without waiting for acceptance. And this creates a profound shift inside. Your confidence becomes rooted, not borrowed. Your peace becomes consistent, not fragile. That doesn't mean you'll stop caring about people. It means you'll stop needing their validation to function. You'll appreciate feedback, but not depend on it. You'll listen to advice, but trust your own judgment. You'll be open to connection, but closed to manipulation. The more you validate yourself from within, the less reactive you become. You won't feel the urge to explain yourself all the time. You won't feel shaken by judgment or triggered by rejection. You'll understand that people's opinions are just that, opinions, not facts, not reality, and definitely not the measure of your worth. Buddhism reminds us that the self is not something to be confirmed by others, it is something to be realized through awareness. When you sit in meditation, when you observe your thoughts, when you strip away ego and performance, you begin to touch the essence of who you are. That essence doesn't need a title, a trophy, or a spotlight. It simply is, and that is enough. In modern life, where everything is shared, rated, liked, and judged, it's easy to get lost. But you can choose a different way. You can choose to live quietly, intentionally, and honestly. You can choose to be proud of your journey, even if no one claps for you. You can choose to show up for yourself every day with love, trust, and truth. Start small. The next time you feel the urge to prove something to someone, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it's true to me, or because I want to be seen a certain way? Then choose truth. Choose authenticity. Choose alignment. You don't need to be visible to be valuable. You don't need to be understood to be worthy. You don't need to be celebrated to be real. And when you truly understand this, when you stop chasing validation and start honoring your own voice, you become untouchable. No insult can shake you. No praise can control you. No silence can define you. Because the real you, your essence, your spirit, your truth needs nothing from the outside to feel whole. That is the Buddhist path. That is the freedom beyond approval. That is the peace that arises when you stop needing permission to be who you already are. 6. Strengthen your inner discipline daily. Discipline is not a punishment. It's not a burden. And it's not about forcing yourself to suffer. In Buddhism, discipline is sacred. It's a daily act of self-respect. A spiritual promise you make to yourself not to be perfect, but to be awake. It's the invisible thread that holds your inner world together when emotions threaten to pull you apart. And the truth is, without discipline, you are a slave to your moods, your urges, your reactions, and your habits. Most people wait for motivation. They wait to feel like being calm, patient, or wise. But feelings are fleeting. They rise and fall like waves. If you build your life around them, you live at their mercy. But discipline? Discipline is different. It shows up when you don't feel like it. It holds you steady when your mind is restless. It keeps you walking forward when your emotions try to drag you back. In Buddhist practice, this is called right effort, the steady, committed cultivation of your mind. Not just when it's easy, not just when you're inspired, but daily, even in discomfort, even in silence, even when no one sees. Discipline means you don't react just because you feel angry. You pause, you breathe. You let the anger rise, but you don't obey it. Discipline means you don't abandon your peace just because someone else lost theirs. You remain rooted in awareness. Discipline means you commit to practices like meditation, self-inquiry, silence, because they're always easy, but because they shape the foundation of who you're becoming. And here's the truth. Inner discipline is not built through dramatic effort. It's built through small, repeated choices. Every time you wake up and meditate, even for 5 minutes, you train your mind. Every time you choose a kind response over a reactive one, you rewire your brain. Every time you sit with discomfort instead of escaping it, you deepen your resilience. These actions may seem small, but over time, they compound. They create a version of you that is steady, clear, and powerful. Buddhism recognizes that the untrained mind is like a wild monkey, constantly jumping, distracted, emotional, impulsive. But the trained mind is calm, still, and unshakable. That calmness is not luck, it's the fruit of discipline. It's the result of showing up for yourself, again and again, especially when you don't feel like it. Discipline also means setting boundaries with yourself. You learn to say no to your lower impulses, not because you're restricting your freedom, but because you're protecting your peace. You don't chase every desire. You don't indulge every craving. You become selective with your time, your energy, your focus. You begin to live not out of impulse but out of intention. This is why Buddhist monks follow a disciplined routine. They wake before dawn, meditate for hours, eat simply, speak minimally, and live with great mindfulness. But you don't need to live in a monastery to embody discipline. You can bring the same level of care, structure, and awareness into your everyday life. Discipline can look like waking up early to center yourself before the world pulls at your attention, limiting your time on social media so your mind doesn't become overstimulated, sitting with your emotions instead of reacting to them, speaking less so your words carry more truth, being mindful of your diet, not out of vanity, but because your body is a temple for awareness, journaling each night to reflect instead of letting the day pass unconsciously. It's not about being rigid or robotic. It's about respecting your own mind enough to lead it, rather than being led by it. And when discipline becomes your default, something profound happens. You start to trust yourself. You become someone you can rely on. You're no longer up one day and down the next. Your actions are aligned with your values. Your reactions become thoughtful, not automatic. Your energy becomes focused, not scattered. Many people admire peace, but few realize that peace is built on discipline. It is the result of conscious effort, moment by moment. You can't plant seeds of chaos and expect a harvest of calm. You must plant discipline every single day. But remember, discipline is not about perfection. You will fall, you will react, you will make mistakes. But the disciplined mind doesn't stay there. It returns, it learns, it starts again. And that starting again, over and over, is what makes you unstoppable. So don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for the right mood. Build your discipline like a sacred ritual. Let it be the anchor that holds you steady in a restless world. Let it be your quiet strength when the noise gets loud. Let it be your shield when emotions rise. Because at the end of the day, it's not your feelings that will shape your life. It's your discipline. And when your discipline is stronger than your distractions, your peace becomes permanent. 7. Not everything requires a reaction. In a world that constantly demands your attention, your opinion, your energy, choosing not to react can feel unnatural, almost wrong. We live in a time where silence is mistaken for weakness, restraint for passivity, and patience for avoidance. But Buddhism reveals a timeless truth. Not every situation deserves your energy. Not every battle is meant to be fought, and not every word spoken needs a response. Most people live in a reactive state. Their emotions are always at the surface, ready to explode at the slightest discomfort. If someone disagrees with them, they argue. If someone offends them, they defend. If things go wrong, they panic. Every experience becomes a trigger, and every trigger becomes a drama. But here's the cost. A life lived in constant reaction is a life drained of peace. It's a life where your mind is never your own. It's shaped and shaken by everything around you. Buddhism teaches the opposite path, a path of inner stillness, a way of living where you observe without absorbing, witness without being pulled in, and choose silence over unnecessary noise. The ability to let things pass without reacting is not weakness. It's the highest form of strength. It is mastery over the self. Ask yourself, how many times have you reacted emotionally and later regretted it? How often have you spoken out of impulse, only to wish you'd remained quiet? How much of your energy has been wasted trying to prove, defend, explain, or control things that never truly mattered? When you understand the power of non-reaction, you begin to see with new eyes. You realize that not every insult needs to be answered. Not every criticism needs to be corrected. Not every misunderstanding needs to be fixed. Some things are better left untouched, unspoken, and unresolved. Not because you don't care, but because you do care about your peace. This doesn't mean you suppress your feelings. It means you rise above them. It means you allow the emotion to arise without letting it control you. In Buddhism, this is called mindful detachment, the ability to witness your thoughts, emotions, and the world around you without getting entangled. For example, someone criticizes you. Your first impulse might be to argue, to defend, to correct them. But if you pause, truly pause, you might realize their words came from ignorance, pain, or projection. They are speaking from their own internal struggle, and you don't have to participate in it. By choosing not to react, you remove yourself from the game. You don't validate their negativity. You don't give their words power. Instead, you hold your center. You walk away. You let your silence speak louder than any reply ever could. Buddhist monks are trained in this principle deeply. When insulted, they bow. When provoked, they smile. Not because they're passive, but because they understand the cost of peace. They know that every time you react in anger or ego, you're pulled out of presence. You lose awareness, you lose your grip on the now. And the moment you're no longer fully present, you're no longer free. Not everything deserves your energy. Some things are meant to pass through you like wind. The more you can let go in the moment, the more powerful you become. Your energy is no longer wasted on things you cannot control. Instead, it's directed inward toward awareness, toward calm, toward clarity. Let's go even deeper. Every reaction reinforces a habit. If you get angry every time someone disrespects you, that becomes your pattern. If you panic every time plans fall apart, that becomes your identity. But when you practice non-reaction, you begin to rewrite your inner programming. You tell your mind, we no longer respond like this. we no longer give this power, and your mind, over time, begins to obey. You become less easily triggered, less easily manipulated, less easily disturbed, and more rooted, more grounded, more awake. This is the path of emotional liberation. Non-reaction is not about being indifferent, it's about being wise. You conserve your words for what matters. You conserve your emotions for what truly deserves them. You don't react because you're afraid or numb. You don't react because you're aware, and awareness doesn't need to shout. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is say nothing, do nothing. Simply sit with the discomfort and let it pass. That's strength, that's maturity, that's self-mastery. In a world that screams for attention, be the one who is quiet. In a world that chases validation, be the one who is content. In a world that overreacts, be the one who simply observes. Because not everything requires your reaction. Not every comment deserves your reply. Not every moment needs your opinion. Not every argument needs to be won. Not every wound must be reopened. Not every person deserves your energy. When you let go of the need to react, you step into a life of deep presence. You stop being pulled by every wave. You stop being hijacked by every emotion. You become the calm in the storm, the eye of the hurricane, the stillness in the noise. And that stillness becomes your power. You begin to hear things more clearly, not just what others say, but what your soul whispers. You notice the space between thought and reaction. You experience the richness of each moment. You walk slowly, speak softly, and live deeply. This is not detachment from life, it is intimacy with it. Because when you're no longer distracted by everything, you begin to feel everything. You see someone's pain behind their anger. You feel your own breath in moments of tension. You witness your old patterns arise and you smile at them without obeying. You see reality more clearly because you're no longer lost in reaction. So begin now. The next time you're provoked, pause. The next time someone disrespects you, observe. The next time you feel triggered, breathe. The next time you want to respond, choose stillness. Let people wonder. Let them misunderstand. Let them think they've won. You know something deeper. You know that peace is more valuable than being right. You know that silence is more powerful than noise. You know that presence is more lasting than reaction. And in that knowing, you become untouchable, because life stops challenging you, but because you stop giving every challenge your attention. The awakened mind does not fight every battle. It chooses peace over provocation, awareness over ego, freedom over control. So remember, the one who can observe without reacting is the one who owns their life. Train your mind until your silence becomes your strength, your stillness becomes your protection, and your awareness becomes your power. Not everything deserves your reaction. And when you truly understand that, you rise above everything that once controlled you. Would you like a concluding paragraph for the entire video as well? You have a choice in every moment, a choice that most people never realize they have. You can react blindly out of anger, fear, ego, or habit, or you can respond consciously out of wisdom, patience, clarity, and presence. This is not just a small shift. It is a profound transformation, because the moment you stop reacting to everything around you, you start reclaiming your life from everything that once controlled it. You begin to notice how much of your suffering was never caused by the world, but by your reaction to it. You begin to understand that your mind doesn't have to be a battlefield. It can be a temple, a place of stillness, a place of power, a place where peace is no longer dependent on what happens, but on how you meet what happens. Buddhism teaches us that the real work is always within, that the world will not always be calm, but you can be. people will not always be kind, but you can remain centered. Situations may not go your way, but you can still walk with grace, wisdom, and dignity. Each lesson you've explored choosing your response, protecting your inner state, using silence as a shield, reframing problems, letting go of validation, practicing daily discipline, and understanding that not everything needs your reaction. Each one is a brick in the foundation of your inner sanctuary. And here's the truth. You are building that sanctuary with every decision you make. When you pause instead of arguing, when you breathe instead of blaming, when you let go instead of lashing out, you are becoming someone unshakable. This is not about escaping life. It's about engaging with life in a completely different way, a way that doesn't depend on external control, but internal mastery. A way that doesn't run from emotion, but learns to sit with it until it softens. A way that turns everyday challenges into sacred opportunities for awakening. Imagine waking up and no longer being tossed around by opinions, news, comments, or people's moods. Imagine carrying a quiet stillness in your heart wherever you go, no matter what happens. That stillness isn't found in the outside world. It's cultivated inside you. And the path begins here with awareness, with intention, and with the decision to no longer give your power away through mindless reaction. So, let today be the day you stop living on autopilot. Let today be the day you stop letting emotions rule your actions. Let today be the day you begin the slow, steady, powerful return to yourself. Because when you master the art of not reacting, you don't just find peace, you become peace. And in that state, nothing outside of you can shake the truth within you. Not noise, not judgment, not chaos, not fear. Only stillness remains. And from that stillness, you begin to not just react, not just survive, but truly, deeply live. That is the power of not reacting. That is emotional freedom. That is the Buddhist path. And that path begins now.